Hello, everyone. I hope you're here expecting some good poetry, and I hope that's what you get. But today's title was hard to come by. There's really no way to put it all together under one name, so let's try animals, humor, and politics. If that doesn't cover all the bases, I don't know what will. But before we get started, I'm going to show you a little bit of spring here in western Pennsylvania. These are the tulips and daffodils that I just picked yesterday and today for a little bit of display. And I hope you're having some nice spring flowers wherever you are, wherever you find yourself now. So here we go with Angie's Tale. The epigram is How to Conquer Intractable Allergies. When Angie went to school to be a vet, she loved her cats and dogs the best of all. She loved, in theory, every kind of pet, and rats and mice and birds adored, but had to call her doctor. Her eyes were itchy, not to speak of sneezes that woke her up at night and when she read her books. But that was not as bad as were the wheezes grabbing at her chest and bringing panicked looks from classmates, friends, professors, ER docs who loaded her with meds and good advice, admiring all her pluckiness and facing knocks, and everyone agreed her smile was nice. She left behind the cats she loved the most and tried her luck with birds and horses, even cows. A few months seemed to be okay until she lost her tolerance, and coughing racked her now. The raging allergies all reached a peak of bad. She spent a few days in the pulmonary ward. Her scores at finals time were very sad, and incompletes were all her final grade. She's selling health insurance now to veterinarians and doing well. She knows exactly what they need. She talks the language and is never a contrarian. Drives a Jaguar, wears a mink, and never needs to plead. Well, I hope you got a laugh out of that. I had a lot of fun writing it, and it's based on experience that I had with a number of veterinary students who frequently, although not as frequently as you'd think, would become allergic to animals, and when they did, it was often pretty bad because they had daily and very strong exposure. Now, next, I want to read a little ditty I wrote about how squirrels can't leave bird feeders alone, which has resulted in challenges for those who design bird feeders, to say the least. This poem is called Leftovers. And it has an epigram from a poem by Billy Collins. Someone needs to keep an eye on such things. The squirrel shows up every day at our bird feeder and finds the leftovers from the birds with whom he coexists. He much prefers the sunflower seeds, or on lucky days the dried fruit bits dropped from the stirring beaks of cardinals. When he first approached the feeder, he leapt upon a steel post and grasped tightly, scattering the birds in all directions. Unable to move upward, he slowly slid down and met the greeting earth below. discovering edible bits, and now feeds there among the juncos, who prefer the scraps. He is gifted by the tufted titmouse, chickadees in flocks, the Carolina wrens, nifty nuthatches who can stand upside down in bushes, song sparrows, pine siskins, purple finches, and even the showy goldfinch in winter plumage. Jays come. Their weight deflects the spring perch. This is called unnatural selection. They leave with a loud, resentful, screaming clamor. The god of the feeder comes to fill the larder. The birds wait in the bushes, and squirrel stays close. Easy food is never rejected. But when the feeder is removed, they resume their foraging as before. Nobody starves, and there are no angry demonstrations. Well, that's better than we could say about we humans and our numerous follies. Okay, now what about politics? We have that in our title. And where are we going to go with that? Wouldn't you know, I found a poem by William Butler Yeats. William Butler Yeats. And it even has an epigram. It's a quote from Thomas Mann, the famous German writer. In our time, the destiny of man presents its meaning in political terms. I hope you'll listen very closely to this poem because there's something in the very first line that's extremely important. So you remember it. How can I, that girl standing there, my attention fix on Roman or on Russian or on Spanish politics? Yet here's a traveled man that knows what he talks about. And there's a politician that has both read and thought. And maybe what they say is true of war and war's alarms. But, oh, that I were young again and held her in my arms. Who is that? Well, it's the girl in the first line. It's always a good idea to pay attention when you're listening to poetry. I love that poem because it's so ironic. And it intends to be so serious about politics, but the poet's really not. He's thinking, if I were only young again and held her in my arms. You can hardly blame him for that. Okay, well, let me lean down here and grab my disappearing notes. We still have another poem to go. And this is a poem that may be political. I wrote it several years ago when we began to learn how some people have more privilege than others. The poem, therefore, is called Privilege. I'm not quite sure what kind of privilege I have. I'm an American, so maybe it is flag privilege. You know, red, white, and blue privilege. Of course, there is the Union Jack, same colors. Britain is not such a bad place either. But many people with privileges over there, no written constitution there. The question about privileges and who has them is a good one. It seems like a real privilege to be beautiful, to be tall, to be athletic, to be handsome, or to be smart or good at music, a basketball star, a free person, a mother of children, or one of their teachers at school. But maybe the biggest privilege is to live here in the country that most of the world wants to come to and stay forever. It's exceptional to be called American citizen. And you can have that whether your skin is white, brown, yellow, black, or somewhere in between. People who earn it appreciate it the most. If you want to know what your privilege is, ask one of them. I hope that doesn't undermine some of your own thoughts about privilege, but if it does, maybe that's a good thing. That's all for this session. Hope you'll be back next week for another go. It will be almost May by then. It's hard to believe since this week we're expected to have another light freeze. I woke 2 days ago and I had ice in my bird bath. But today it's a beautiful 81 degrees. We can't complain about that, can we? May. The month of May has a lot of connotations and poetic opportunities. We'll see if that's true. Bye now.